Just pipped you, but overall, are you pleased with the session?
Yeah, really pleased with the session. My team did a really great job. My engineers did a fantastic job to turn the car around, because in P1 was a tricky session with that spin, and the car generally felt great. It's just I think we're losing. I think it is on the straights. It's a lot of time to be losing. So we have a lot of work to do. We really have to push so hard at the back in Maranello to improve on power. It was something that I think we were conscious of last year, that we thought that Mercedes started earlier than us or the rest, which they did last time as well. So they've done a fantastic job, and we've got to step up. We've got to push to be able to close that gap. I think car-wise, the car feels great, and I think we can compete with him through corners. But when you're down on power, it's just the way it is.
What if I told you that Lewis Hamilton just did something with the Ferrari that not even the Maranello engineers expected to see? Because what happened in the sprint classification in China left a very curious scene inside the garage. While the world saw a spectacular lap, inside Ferrari the engineers analyzed the data, trying to understand where that pace had come from. Subscribe to continue uploading more of this type of content now, if we continue. Ferrari Lego a Shanghai con una certeza bastante incomoda. Todavía están por detrás de Mercedes en potencia y en gestión energética. On paper, the car shouldn't be setting certain times. And yet, when Hamilton took to the track in sprint qualifying, some performance peaks appeared that simply did not fit with what the car model said. The strangest thing is that this is not the first time this has happened. Already in 2025, on this same circuit, Hamilton surprised his own team by achieving a sprint pole that not even Ferrari really expected to achieve. And now, with the new car, history seems to repeat itself, with a car that loses power compared to Mercedes, but that, in the hands of Hamilton, suddenly seems capable of something much greater. So the big question begins to run through the paddock. Is Hamilton finding performance that Ferrari doesn't yet understand, or are we simply seeing the car's true hidden potential that no one had discovered yet? During the first analyses of the weekend, the technical team was clear about the general diagnosis of the car. Compared to Mercedes, the Ferrari continued to lose time in prolonged acceleration zones, something that was explained by the difference in power and energy efficiency. However, in cornering and chassis stability, it was a completely different story. The car showed a very interesting performance window when the aerodynamic balance was just right, something that engineers described as a single-seater with a high-performance ceiling, but extremely difficult to activate consistently. This meant that in most sessions the Ferrari looked simply competitive, but in certain circumstances it could transform into something much faster than the team had initially anticipated. Small anomalies began to appear in the telemetry data. They were not errors or inconsistencies, but something much more interesting. Moments in which Hamilton managed to extract performance from the car that the simulation models had not anticipated so clearly. In certain fast laps, the Briton found tenths in specific sectors of the circuit that did not seem to be explained solely by the evolution of the track or by an improvement in conditions. When the engineers compared those laps with those of other drivers or even with Ferrari's own previous simulations, the same conclusion emerged. There was something about Hamilton's driving that was unlocking some of the car's potential. That phenomenon became even more evident when sprint qualifying began in Shanghai. The format of the weekend added special pressure because the teams only had a single practice session to adjust the car before entering directly into the fight against the stopwatch. In these conditions, finding the perfect car window becomes a much greater challenge, since any error in the configuration can ruin the entire competitive weekend. Therefore, within Ferrari, the approach was relatively conservative, ensuring a stable, competitive car within a predictable performance range. Nobody inside the garage expected a revolution in lap times, but when Hamilton took to the track and began his attempt at sprint qualifying, something began to change on the monitors on the pit wall. Sector after sector, the stopwatch showed increasingly competitive splits. It wasn't just a good lap, it was a combination of precision in each braking, minimum cornering speed, and absolute confidence in the car that allowed each area of the circuit to be attacked with very controlled aggression. In the fast corners of Shanghai, the Ferrari seemed especially solid, and Hamilton took advantage of exactly that strong point of the car to construct a lap that, in a matter of seconds, began to attract the attention of the team's own engineers. When he finally finished the lap, the result was shocking even inside the Ferrari garage. The telemetry data confirmed that Hamilton had found time in areas where the car, in theory, should not have such a clear advantage. Engineers immediately began reviewing the data to understand what exactly had happened. And the more they analyzed the data, the more obvious something became. The performance they had just seen didn't quite fit Ferrari's model of the SF26. The car had been fast, yes, but in a way that the team still couldn't fully explain. After sprint qualifying, the atmosphere inside the Ferrari garage was not typical of a team that had simply achieved a good lap. Normally, when a driver sets a competitive time, the engineers celebrate the result and quickly move on to preparing for the next session. But this time something different happened. While the mechanics worked around the car and the team analyzed the data, a situation appeared on the telemetry screens that was raising more questions than answers. The numbers indicated that Hamilton had extracted a level of performance from the Ferrari that did not completely match the predictions of the car model that the team uses to understand its behavior. For this reason, Hamilton's return in the Chinese sprint classification became a key piece within that technical puzzle. Engineers knew that the data they were seeing could hold important clues about how to unlock the car's true potential. Every little detail of the telemetry could reveal something. How the car reacted when entering a corner, how the suspension behaved in areas of high lateral load, or how energy use was distributed throughout the lap. In other words, more than just a fast lap, Hamilton's performance had become an unintentional experiment that could help Ferrari better understand its own car. Meanwhile, from outside the team, the narrative was quickly beginning to take shape. For fans and analysts, what had been seen in Shanghai was a clear demonstration that Hamilton was beginning to find his place within Ferrari. Después de años en Mercedes, adaptarse a un coche completamente diferente no era una tarea sencilla. Each car has its own personality, a particular way of reacting to the wheel, and great drivers need time to discover how to work with those characteristics instead of fighting against them. What had happened in China suggested that Hamilton was beginning to discover exactly how to drive the Ferrari to its full potential. However, within the team, the feeling was more complex. Satisfaction with performance was accompanied by a very clear technical concern. If Hamilton could find those tenths on a given lap, then the car had more performance available than Ferrari was consistently using. That meant there was still room for improvement, but also that the team needed to understand precisely what was happening so they could replicate it in future sessions. And in modern Formula One, where every millisecond can mean the difference between pole and second row, discovering that kind of hidden performance can completely change the direction of a championship. So while the paddock began to talk about Hamilton's return to the front positions, inside Ferrari the engineers continued to look at the data with a mix of curiosity and determination. They knew that that lap was not just a good performance by their driver. It was a sign that the car could be faster than they had imagined if they could figure out exactly how to make it work at that sweet spot where everything fits together. With the sprint classification finished and the data already downloaded into Ferrari systems, the team was faced with a very particular situation. On the one hand, the results showed that the car had real potential to fight at the front. But on the other hand, it also revealed something that Maranello knew they had to resolve as soon as possible. They still did not fully understand why the car was capable of producing that level of performance in certain circumstances. And in Formula One, when you don't fully understand why a car is fast, you also run the risk of losing that performance as quickly as it appeared. Dentro del equipo técnico, la prioridad inmediata es converso en estudiar cada elemento de la vuelta de Hamilton para encontrar patrones claros que pudieran replicarse. If the SF26 had shown that speed in Shanghai, it meant that there was a specific combination of aerodynamic balance, energy management, and driving style that enabled the best version of the car to be activated. The problem is that this operating window seemed extremely delicate. A small change in configuration, a variation in track temperature, or even a different setting in energy management could be enough to completely alter the behavior of the car. That fragility in the performance window was precisely what worried Ferrari, because the team's recent history had already shown something similar. In 2025, on this same circuit, Hamilton had also surprised the garage itself with a sprint pole that no one really expected. But that weekend also left a very clear lesson for the team. After the sprint race, a change in the car's setup ended up altering its balance, and the performance disappeared in the main race. What had seemed like a brilliant car in one session ended up becoming a much more difficult car to drive a few hours later. Therefore, Ferrari's challenge now was not only to repeat a good lap. The real challenge was understanding how to keep the car within that performance window without making the same mistakes of the past. Every technical decision of the weekend became critical. from the aerodynamic setup to the park firm management that limits how much the car can be modified after qualifying. The engineers knew that any miscalculated change could destroy the balance that had allowed Hamilton to find those unexpected tenths. Meanwhile, Hamilton seemed completely aware of what was happening. The Briton had been in Formula One long enough to recognize when a car has hidden potential. Throughout his career, he had worked with engineers, developers, and simulators to build champion cars, and he knew that many times the true performance of a car does not appear immediately. Sometimes it takes a driver to explore the car's limits to reveal exactly where its sweet spot lies. And that is precisely what seemed to be happening at Ferrari. Hamilton wasn't just piloting the car. Estaba ayudando al equipo a descubrir su verdadero character. Every fast lap, every short run, and every telemetry data became one more clue in a much larger process, understanding how to transform a car with potential into a consistently winning car. The big question was now beginning to take shape within the paddock. If the Ferrari was capable of producing those peaks of performance in Hamilton's hands, then the car's true competitive ceiling could be much higher than the season's initial results indicated. And if Ferrari could understand exactly what was happening in those fast laps, the impact could go far beyond a simple sprint qualifying in China. Because in modern Formula One, where technical development advances race after race, finding a clue on how to unlock performance can completely change the course of a championship. What started as a surprising lap in Shanghai could end up becoming the starting point to finally understand the real potential of the Ferrari. And if that's the case, then Hamilton's performance in China won't have just been a great lap. It will have been the moment when Ferrari began to discover how fast its car can really be. Subscribe to continue uploading more of that content. Now you really think about all this.